Before the Vikings ever saw land, they saw water. Endless, moving, unforgiving. A longship cuts through the sea, low and narrow, never truly separate from the waves beneath it. There is no deck to hide under, no cabin to retreat into, just wood, rope, sail, and men exposed to the world. This is how Viking journeys began, not with certainty, but with acceptance. They did not carry maps marked with safe routes. They did not rely on compasses pointing obediently north. The sea offered no instructions, and the sky made no promises. Yet they sailed anyway. Direction came from watching the world itself, from memory passed down through generations, from the color of water, the shape of waves, and the smell of land carried by the wind. Birds mattered, clouds mattered, light mattered. Some Vikings carried stones believed to reveal the sun even when clouds hid it, a way to guess direction when the sky refused clarity. Others trusted patterns learned through years of survival. Navigation was not a science alone. It was an experience. Every voyage was an argument with nature. On board, life was stripped down to essentials. Space was scarce. Bodies sat shoulder to shoulder along the length of the ship. Oars rested close, because speed could mean escape or death. Everyone had a role. No passengers, no spectators. You rode when told. You rested when allowed. You endured. Food was simple and unforgiving. Dried fish, hard bread, sometimes cheese or meat preserved with salt or smoke. Nothing fresh after days at sea. Nothing warm unless the weather was kind. Meals were not shared around a table. They were grabbed, chewed quickly, and swallowed with seawater splashing nearby. Hunger was normal. Complaining was pointless. Water was precious. Rain was welcomed like a gift from the gods. Every sip was measured. Sleep came when it could. There were no beds, no privacy. Men slept sitting upright, leaning against shields, cargo, and each other. Some slept wrapped in wool, others exposed to wind and spray. The ship never stopped moving. Waves rocked it constantly. The sound of water against wood became a rhythm that never fully left the mind. Even in sleep, the body remained alert. Falling overboard meant disappearance. No one stopped for you. Cold was the enemy that never rested. The sea stole heat relentlessly. Wool clothing helped, even when wet, but warmth was temporary. Fires were almost impossible on open water. The only heat came from bodies pressed close together. Winter voyages were brutal, summer ones merely difficult. Hands cracked, skin burned from salt, muscles screamed from rowing. But stopping was not an option. A calm sea could turn violent without warning. Storms arrived without mercy. Sails were lowered. Oars fought against waves that felt alive. Water poured in faster than it could be removed. Fear was present, but controlled. Panic killed faster than storms. And there were moments worse than storms. Silence. Days when the horizon never changed. When land did not appear. When the mind began to wander toward dark questions. Did we misjudge the wind? Did the gods turn away? There were no toilets on a Viking ship. When nature called, you leaned over the side, carefully. Balance mattered. A mistake could mean falling into freezing water, weighed down by clothing, unnoticed amid waves and exhaustion. Nothing about this life allowed dignity as we imagine it, only function. And yet, journeys continued, because the alternative was starvation, or stagnation, or being trapped in a land that could not sustain you. At night the sky became both guide and threat. Stars offered direction when clouds allowed them to exist. The North Star mattered, but only if visible. When it disappeared, so did certainty. Some Vikings believed the gods watched more closely at sea, that every wave was judged, every decision weighed. Death here was common, accepted, sometimes sudden. A man could be washed overboard without a sound. A wave could break bones. Illness could spread quietly in cramped conditions. There were no burials at sea. The ocean kept what it took. And still, they sailed. Because the longship was more than transportation. It was freedom. It allowed them to move faster than the news, to arrive where no one expected them, to reach lands others believed unreachable. It turned the sea from a wall into a road. When land finally appeared, it did not feel like victory. It felt like relief. Legs struggled to remember solid ground. Hands trembled from weeks of tension. Bodies smelled of salt, sweat, and smoke. But they had arrived. Trade, exploration, settlement, or violence followed, depending on the journey's purpose. And when it was time to return, they did it all again. No compasses, no certainty, no safety nets. Just knowledge, endurance, and a deep understanding that survival favored those who adapted. This is what Viking travel really looked like. Not heroic poses on the prow of a ship, not a constant battle, but discomfort, exposure, discipline. A life lived inches above death for days, weeks, sometimes months. And maybe that is why the Viking world expanded so far. Because only people willing to live like this could reach places no one else dared to go. If you want to keep exploring history, not as legend, but as lived experience, subscribe to 5 Minutes of Culture. Twice a week, we step into worlds where survival was never guaranteed and meaning had to be earned. And the next time you complain about a bad night's sleep, remember, there was a time when men crossed oceans without maps, without warmth, without certainty, and called it a normal journey.